All right, we'll go ahead and record this meeting as well. We're going to get started here in a minute or so. Just give people a little bit of time to join the Skype link. So we'll just ask people, if you're not talking, to go ahead and mute your phone.
Okay, I'm muting.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Is Jared from CDOT?
You signed in?
Jared must be CDOT.
I don't know.
I bet so.
We can go through and ask people on
I will.
their phone number. So I'll let you
Sure.
stand behind there.
Okay. There I am.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm Commissioner Barbara Kirkmeyer and going to kick off tonight's presentation. Before we get going, though, we're going to do some really quick introductions. So, in the room,
Chad Hall with CDOT.
you guys speak up loud for everybody here.
Chad Hall with CDOT Project Manager.
Rich Christie with CDOT, Program Engineer.
Heather Paddock, CDOT, Region 4 Director.
Commissioner Mike Freeman.
Commissioner Scott James.
Commissioner Steve Renaud.
Commissioner Kevin Ross.
Public Hunter Hoshiko.
Great.
Don Anderson, Public Works.
Curtis Hall, Public Works.
Don Dunker, Public Works.
Jay McDonald, Public Works.
Nancy McDonald, citizen.
Great.
Willie Hagemeister, IT.
Okay.
Elizabeth Relford, Public Works.
All right. And on the Skype call, we have Jim from
Jim Houston with CDOT.
Okay, great. See Joe Timmer. Is that correct? You have to unmute as a guest. Okay, we'll skip to Jared.
Jared Files, CDOT.
Okay. And then we have another guest with a phone number of 970-590-5839. Could you identify yourself?
Yes, this is Melanie. Yes, Melanie, President with IEH1 Laboratories.
Okay, great. And then lastly, Joe Timmer, could you tell us who you're with? Maybe if you could take yourself off mute. Maybe they don't want to identify themselves. Okay, so we're going to do a brief kind of presentation today about the solutions that CDOT has come up with regarding O Street and Highway 85. So I don't remember exactly when it was. Was it 2 years ago? 3 years ago now? 2 years ago. About 2 years ago, Weld County and CDOT reached out to all the folks in the O Street, Highway 85 area, and started talking to you about what was going on in the US 85 corridor. We'd had several meetings along the corridor to talk about railroad crossing closures to improve safety, enhance safety along that corridor, but also to work with Union Pacific and coordinate with CDOT so that we could get 40 miles of right-of-way in perpetuity for CDOT and for Highway 85. 2 years ago when we had the meeting, it was to kind of open up the conversation with everybody, tell you about some ideas that we had. We wanted to hear your ideas, understand the importance of what was going on in the area, and so that CDOT could come up with solutions. So here we are 2 years later, and I would say from Weld County's perspective, I think CDOT's done a great job in coming up with a solution that I think meets what we heard that night, meets the concerns from people, the requests that we had from people that night, the public that night, and I think they've done a really good job on doing that. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to CDOT so that they can give their brief presentation on the solution for O Street and Highway 85. So
I'm just going to put up the presentation form.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
No problem. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You can just interrupt.
Again, my name is Chad Hall. I'm project manager for this project. Commissioner Kirkmeyer did a good job of going over some of the background of this project, so I'll kind of breeze through this. Again, 500 acres of US 85 are currently within Union Pacific right-of-way, and that's been historically difficult for us from a scheduling standpoint and cost standpoint, and then the potential ramifications of that, UP could feasibly tell us to move our roadway. So there's some heavy weight behind taking care of this. And as Commissioner Kirkmeyer mentioned, we got into a purchase and sale agreement with Union Pacific to take care of that. That agreement was executed in 2017. CDOT will acquire fee ownership of this land, the 500 acres, once this agreement is finalized and the real estate transaction is closed. Part of it, as Commissioner Kirkmeyer mentioned, is the closure of 12 at-grade railroad crossings, of which O Street is one of them. Again, took pretty much most of these slides, Commissioner. I appreciate that. We held a public meeting a couple years ago.
Sorry.
Oh, was that you? Held a public meeting a couple years ago, and some of the concerns that were mentioned were obviously the economic impact, response time for emergency vehicles being greater with that crossing closed, and then adjacent roads inadequate for truckloads. There's a lot of trucking in this area, and there's that kind of steep hill up toward County Road 41, and then the geometry is kind of tight in those intersections. So those were the primary concerns that we heard at that meeting. Some of the recommendations that came out of that, which is an important thing, when everybody got together and brought some ideas for how we could fix this after we closed O Street. So some of those were a designed U-turn southeast of the existing access, which was a terrific idea, elegant and simple and cheap, which was terrific. So we looked at that in a little bit more detail. Somebody suggested constructing an interchange at the current intersection location. That would obviously take care of the mobility problems, but there were some fatal flaws with that one, cost obviously being one of them, but then also you can't squeeze the northbound and off and on ramps in between the tracks and the road. And so even without cost being an issue, that one didn't work, so we didn't look at it in any more depth. And then there were also several suggestions related to access development on the east side of the bridge. So for those that didn't have fatal flaws, we looked into them in a little bit more detail to make sure we were going the right direction. First thing we looked at is improving those adjacent intersections at 66 and 41 and then O Street and 41. Weld County did the lion's share of the assessment on this to get a handle on what that might cost and what that improvement would do for us. Turns out it's pretty expensive. There's a substantial amount of utilities areas, making those two improvements pretty expensive. And then obviously that doesn't decrease the amount of the route to get there after.
Maybe he's on mute.
He's not on.
I'm not on mute. Hopefully you guys can hear me. That could be a problem. Another thing that we looked at was extension of County Road 39.5 north, and that is the orange line there. The idea is it's a good idea. It would shorten that detour, obviously. Problem is that when we looked at that previously, there's a spur that goes kind of, I don't know, does my mouse work? Hopefully you guys can see that online. Right here, there's a spur, and so Union Pacific said, by all means build that, but you have to separate grade at that. So you'd have to build a bridge over the top of it. That's expensive, and right-of-way acquisition necessary to be able to build the embankment. It flushed out pretty quick. And then again, I mentioned that designed U-turn south. That's the white circle there. That was a good alternative. The one thing that became an issue was safety. So for a truck to slow down enough to make that U-turn, even if we give them the width and an acceleration lane, they're still crossing traffic really slowly. And traffic obviously is picking up. There's more of it now than there was before, and we anticipate that trend will continue. So safety-wise, not great. Every other reason, very good. So then finally, we looked at relocating the existing intersection southeast, and that became our preferred alternative. Some pieces of that, basically just moving what's already there 3,000 feet southeast, constructing a new spur to connect US 85 bypass and O Street, and then obviously we'd be able to move the existing railroad crossing, and we won't do that until the new access is open, importantly. And I'll repeat that later because it's important. Some of the benefits with this alternative, we maintain the existing access. I'll talk about the layout geometry in just a minute. A big one is increase in trip reliability. Right now, trains park on O Street and you're kind of out of luck getting to the development over there. With this alternative, you'll be able to take that flyover and you won't have to stop for trains. So for emergency response vehicles and for just business in general, this is going to be a big improvement for that. And then safety. The new location of that intersection has great sight distance, which is kind of just a byproduct. It has to go where it is, more or less, but it turns out it's got really good sight distance. So that'll be an improvement over the existing intersection. It's dangerous over there. I think everybody's aware of the crash history, even recently. Pretty dangerous area with bypass and business coming together, and then the bridge being right there. So that safety should increase at that location as well. So I talked about the layout of the intersection. This shows a pretty high level view. This is kind of early on in the project development. All the main things are the same. There's a couple of details that are slightly different now, but you can see here on that inset figure, let's see if I can zoom over there. It's hard to see, but this will be left or right turn only, so no left turn onto southbound 85 bypass. And then you'll be able to turn left into it and right into the new spur. Obviously up here is where the existing intersection is. That will be removed after the spur is built, and you can see the crosses or the tracks right here. So it's kind of a high-level overview how that impacts access. The new ingress will look something like this, and there's one thing that's wrong that I'm going to point out. From the south, it will be about the same as it is right now. Whereas right here, this dash suggests this isn't going to be available anymore. We did look at that in more detail, and it is safe with the weaving lane, with the length that we have for weaving. So we will go ahead and leave that open. So from the south, access to the development should be exactly as it is now. Unless you want to head east, or if this is a quicker one, so Taylor Implement, there's another company down there right now, then they'll have the option of taking the spur, which will make it a little bit quicker for them. From the north, used to be obviously that you turn left right on O Street here. Rather, now you'll go down to the spur and turn left there and backtrack just a little into the development. Obviously, all these, this map and the next one are assuming sort of a trying to get to or trying to leave from this general area right there. So the new egress, again with the south, it'll be the same as it is right now. So you'll take the 6th Avenue on-ramp onto bypass 85. But if you're headed north, then you take the spur, and then you'll go north that direction out of there. That's kind of a high-level view of what we're planning right now as far as schedule goes. We're in the middle of design right now, right-of-way, all of that. We're planning on being done here in the next few months, and then I'm hoping to get to construction early next year. This says summer, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get moving on it quicker than that. And then again, we won't close that at-grade crossing right now until we're done with the new spur, so there won't be any lapse in access. That is about all that I have on this. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them right now, and then also my contact information is up. Yes, ma'am.
The trucks coming out of JBS, what are they going to do
If they want to come south from right in here,
from the plant?
the plant right here, so they ought to be going down to 5th Avenue probably. Alternatively, they could take, I think this is H right here, and then 11th maybe up north to O Street, and then hop back onto 85.
But that's what they would have to do now.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not changing.
yeah, depending on where they're trying, if they're trying, the only reason this would change that is if they were trying to access this place right here, or this development in there. So if they're leaving the plant and going to the development right there, then they would have to do a little bit of gymnastics, but as it is, that won't change JBS's plants movements.
I'm confused because now they all come across Oak Street.
So on the west side of the railroad tracks. So
Well, they cross on Oak Street, and then the majority of them take the bypass to get to go south.
Oh, are you talking about the lamb plant leaving there?
No JBS.
So if they go up to take O Street to the bypass right there, all of that's still going to be open. That's not changing. Anything on the west side of the highway right now is not changing. Only on the east.
How are they going to get across the track?
Well, they'll go over the top of them. So the flyover will still be there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this, I don't know. I'm sorry if you can't see here. Let me change this little thing. Sometimes easier to see. So this is the flyover right here. I don't have a great. I'm hesitant to hop onto the internet here, but this is the flyover. So
Maybe we're just not understanding what your question is. So where are you saying they're coming from? They're on O Street and they're headed
When they come out
west?
of the plant, they go north.
Okay,
And then they cross on O Street, across the tracks. And then they get
east,
south, well, east just a little bit and then go south to the bypass.
So here's what I'm hearing is that they leave JBS, go north, turn right on O Street, and then head east.
No, they just go east just that little bit until they come to the 6th Street. And then they go
6th Avenue right here,
across the town.
and then they get on the on-ramp.
So that didn't change.
Okay, no, that will change. Yep, you're correct in that. So that different route is what would apply then for them.
So how are they gonna?
So there's a couple of,
they gotta go across 5th up to 11th and go on and go around that way and get on. They'd come right by this building basically and go around.
yeah, they could go on H right there, right next to the plant, and then north on 11th and get to O Street that way.
Or get to South 85 on the bypass.
Yep.
Or they
right.
could just go down 5th and go across.
Yeah, just go south to 5th and then go east to 85 that way. And there's a signalized intersection down there. So I don't know, anybody online, I think there's a way of typing in questions there if you're more comfortable with that.
Just have to open up the Skype thing chat to see that conversation. Yep. And so if people do the chat, then it'll pop up over here.
Oh, good. Okay. So does anybody online have any questions? Okay. Well, again, my contact information is on that last slide. It's also on the mailer that we sent out in late May. If you have any follow-up questions or want to talk about that in any more depth, I'm happy to talk to you about it. And then for those of you online, shoot me an email if you like. Thank you. I think that's all that I have, Commissioner.
Okay, great. No other questions? Okay, so
Okay.
you're, all right. Okay, thanks.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and close out the meeting then. And again, if you have any questions for CDOT, you can contact Chad. It was on the flyer. It's on the information that you have. So I don't think we have anything else to discuss this evening. So thank you everyone who participated, and it's nice to know the solution must have worked, because last time we had this meeting, this room was packed, and this time it's not. So good job. Thank you everybody. Hope you have a great evening.
Good evening.
Thanks. Liz.
You did your job.